My hair is so fluffy today. It's like probably on its fourth day of not being washed with dry shampoo. I reckon this is the last day, but anyway, I hope you're well. Thank you so much for watching my video. I'm in this really cozy jumper because it's like getting to be nearly what I would call proper winter weather in Brisbane. If you have never been to Brisbane, we don't actually pretty much get winter. We really only get summer and then a slightly cooler summer. It's kind of like maybe Miami or somewhere that just never really gets cold, but since I'm used to the Brisbane weather, it feels like it's winter, so I'm getting all cozy. And today I really want to tell you about my all-time favorite podcast, which is the Life Coach School podcast by Brooke Castillo. If you have read my blog, if you get any of my emails, if you have basically had any contact whatsoever with me and the things that I talk about, you will have heard me talk about this podcast because I love it so much. I will try and show you it on my phone, and then I will tell you a bit about the podcast. So I don't know if you can see, that's the podcast in the iTunes podcast app. So if you haven't used podcasts before, why the fuck not? They're amazing. You can just use like up here. See, it's my very first app on my phone because I love it that much. It's just that app. If you have an iPhone, it'll already come on your iPhone. You don't have to download it. If you have an Android, I don't know anything about Androids, but there are so many apps you can use to listen to podcasts. They're all free. The podcasters make their money, if they're making money from the podcast, through advertising, so you never have to pay. And they're just amazing. So, the Life Coach School podcast. I discovered it about 2 years ago through, I think it was another podcast called The Lively Show. Brooke did an interview. Oh, no, actually, no, it wasn't. It was through a podcast called Being Boss. Brooke did an interview and I was just listening to it and I was really intrigued by everything that she was talking about. And then she mentioned that she had a podcast and my obsession began. Brooke is a life coach and a weight loss coach or weight coach from California. I absolutely adore her accent as well. And she basically, through this podcast, teaches you how to coach yourself. If you have listened to any of her podcasts before, you will probably find some similarities between what she says and what I say, because a lot of what I have learned, particularly around discipline, motivation, goal setting, all of that kind of thing, setting priorities, everything like that, has really been informed by what I have learned through her podcasts. So yeah, she really teaches you how to coach yourself. So if you like the name of it, the Life Coach School podcast, it's not just for people that want to become life coaches. So she does have a school where she teaches life coaches how to do it, but it's based on the premise that before you coach anyone, you need to be able to coach yourself. So she also has another podcast. I can't actually remember the name of it, but it's actually for like how to set up a life coaching business. This is all the concepts. She has this one concept that really is the crux of everything that she teaches, which is called the model. And I feel like if I try to summarize it, I will probably hack it, but it's essentially the notion that our thoughts create our feelings, create our actions, create our results. And that for me has been such a powerful thing to learn, because whenever I am feeling a certain way that I don't want to feel, I have learned how to take responsibility for that feeling and acknowledge and recognize that that feeling is coming from the way that I am thinking about a particular situation. So when we grow up, we often get told that we are capable of hurting other people's feelings, and they're capable of hurting our feelings, and that people can do things to us and how we feel is beyond our control. But it really isn't, and this podcast really, really, really taught me that. So whenever something shit happens, or whenever I'm feeling like I'm a victim, it has been so helpful to know that the only thing standing between me and the way I want to feel is changing my thoughts, and I'm in control of my thoughts. It's not always easy, and you can really get into these thought habits where your brain just defaults onto negative thoughts or unhelpful thoughts, and it does take practice. And part of it as well, this isn't like just think positive, because positive and negative emotion are both important, and you do need to learn how to process negative emotion and feel it. It's not about avoiding negative emotion. And I love that Brooke often talks about understanding something before you try to change it. So often if we have a negative thought, and if you hear that advice of like just think positive, which if you haven't heard me talk about this before, I really don't like that the way some people teach it, because if you're having negative thoughts and you get told just choose to be happy, it's not really relatable or helpful, because because there's some thought work that needs to go on in between that. But Brooke in her podcast teaches you how to feel negative emotion, and then also how to not, I guess, get caught up in it. Like, it has a purpose, but how to not indulge in all those negative emotions. So I recommend this podcast all the time. If you've ever emailed me personally, I have probably recommended some of her episodes to you, because I am just so obsessed. I have listened, so at the moment she has, I think it's at 162 episodes. 164. I have listened to every single episode, I think at least 3 times. Like, I started episode 1 and I listen like 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to whatever her most recent episode is, and then I go back and I start again. Some of the podcasts and the names of them, like, I tend to try to ignore the names because some of them don't sound relevant, and then I listen to them and I'm like, holy crap, this is so relevant to me. So that's why I kind of just go in order, and if something doesn't sound relevant, I listen to it anyway. I just want to check this recording. Okay. Oh my god, my back is so itchy. You know, when it's just that itch that like can't be satisfied. Okay. So I have a few episode recommendations if you are interested in listening to this podcast, which, if you can't tell, I really recommend listening to it. The thing I love about podcasts is that you can listen to them anywhere. I've listened to most of Brooke's episodes while I've been driving. I live a little bit out of the CBD, so I do a lot of commuting, and that's when I listen. But you can listen when you're working out, when you're cooking dinner, when you're tidying up your room, when you're just chilling. And with podcasts as well, you don't need to give them 100% attention. I think that's why I like driving and listening at the same time, because, you know, when you're driving, you're just kind of processing things. That's the other reason I listen to things multiple times, because I hear something new every time I listen. Another important thing to do is to actually, if you want to change your life, to actually apply the things that Brooke teaches, or anyone you're listening to or following teaches. As she often says, it's one thing to understand something intellectually, it's another to apply it. And I have had the biggest results, obviously, of course, from when I have actually applied the principles that she is talking about. I've journaled about them, just done a brain dump where I write uncensored for, say, 10, 15 minutes. 15 minutes is actually a long time to write on a particular topic if you're doing a brain dump, but it's so helpful if you can just put pen to paper, because when you do that, you're forced to articulate your thoughts, and that is so powerful. And instead of having them vaguely swirling around your head, you can really see what you're working with. So I highly recommend just doing that. If you listen to one on a particular topic and you're like, oh, this really sounds relevant, even just doing a brain dump on that topic and really seeing what your current thoughts are around it will be so helpful. Anyway, back to my recommendations. Where did it go? Okay, so I've written out a few. The first one is that she recently did where did it go? This one, it says bonus 3-part series. Oh, no, that's not it. That's the intro to it. Where did it go? Oh, that's why I'm not in feed. There it is. TLCS Special Edition, that stands for the Life Coach School. So that's you'll find it near 162. And if you just go into the podcast app, you'll see at the top it has unplayed, feed. This is once you've subscribed, and saved. If you just go to feed, that's where you get the full list of absolutely everything. So I recommend going into the feed, and then you can just, oh my god, I'm so retarded at this. Like, the camera is the opposite angle. I can't even. And then you can just download episode, and it will download it, and you can listen, or you can just hit play, and if you've got an internet connection, it'll just play it. So I highly recommend. In that one, Brooke goes through everything that she would teach a beginner about everything that she teaches. That makes sense? Basically, it goes for an hour and a half. So amazing. It's just an intro to everything that she teaches. When I listened to it, I'd already listened to hundreds of hours of her podcast, and I still found it incredibly helpful. So that would be a good place to start. Another good place to start, as I have mentioned, is going to episode 1 and listening to all the episodes in order. And that's because when Brooke created this podcast, she did so in a way, especially at the beginning, that they build upon each other. And as I was saying, Brooke talks about the model that your thoughts create your feelings, create your actions, create your results. It's a bit more complicated than that, and she introduces that at the beginning of the podcast. So if you listen to some later episodes and she's talking about the model, it might be a little bit harder to fully get everything that she's saying, because she's assuming that you're already very familiar with it, which is why I recommend going from episode 1 and working your way through. Even though now those early episodes were recorded a few years ago, it's still extremely, like, nothing has changed. This kind of stuff is relevant all the time, so it doesn't matter that it's a few years old. Please listen to that first episode and then go through from there. And Brooke also introduces more about herself and what she does and all of that kind of thing. But I'll just share as well a few of the episodes I found extremely helpful. This is really hard because there are so many that I love and I recommend all the time. But these are just a few, particularly that I thought might help you as well. So the first one is episode 133, and it's called Well-Being versus Pleasure. And in it, she really talks about well-being being that, I guess it's what we're all striving for, that feeling of being content and being excited and just having that amazing life that we want. And pleasure is the instant gratification side of the coin. It's the we see something and we want to get it right now, and then it's just constantly, I'm not describing this very well at all, but pleasure is essentially instant gratification and well-being is long-term well-being. And in it, she really talks about, I guess, how to get out of that pleasure mindset where you're constantly in instant gratification and you never feel satisfied, to that well-being state of mind where you are constantly satisfied and you're not reactive to all your impulses. So I loved that one. Episode 106. I keep banging the desk. Episode 106 is called Knowing versus Not Knowing. This is so helpful, and I recommend it all the time to people who say they don't know what to do with their life. And Brooke in this episode talks about how saying I don't know actually blocks you from figuring out the answer. If you I love this concept as well of asking yourself really good questions. And if you ask yourselves, instead of why can't I figure out what to do with my life, if you ask yourself, how can I figure out what to do with my life? What kinds of things might help me do that? And just questions that lead to positive answers. But sometimes we ask ourselves those questions and then we say, I don't know. And I know I used to do that. I just say, I don't know what to do with my life. And you really block yourself. You stop your brain from getting to work at figuring out those answers. So that podcast is amazing. Episode 106, Knowing versus Not Knowing. I will link all of these in the description box so you can listen to them straight away. What else have I written? One more. This is the particular episode that really, really, really helped me when I was transitioning from my full-time job to blogging. The episode is episode 59. It's called Ease versus Evolving. I just realized all the episodes I've picked have really similar titles. Not all her titles have a verses in it. But this one is Ease versus, I don't know if it's Ease versus Evolving or versus Evolving. Ease versus Evolving. So she talks about how you can have an easy life. Like people say they want to feel comfortable, and we're all kind of just chasing, I just want to be comfortable. But that when you evolve and when you take things to the next step or the next level, that all of your fear and self-doubt is going to be brought up. And I kind of just then, when I was describing it like that, I've never thought of it this way before, but when you're at the beach in the shallow water and there's all the sand underneath it just all settled and the clear water. So that's what it's like when you're comfortable and you're just going about your life. It's like clear water and then sand under it. And when you're evolving, it's like, I don't know if this analogy even makes sense, but it's like all that sand, you've just like shaken everything up and you're like running around through it. I don't know if this makes sense, but for some reason I just had this visualization of like the sandy water. And then after a while, it all settles again. Once you've evolved and you're at that next level, everything settles back down because your brain gets used to the new normal for you. And then when you go to the next level again, the same thing will keep happening. So when I was changing from my full-time job to doing this stuff, it brought up a lot of fear and self-doubt. And I listened to that podcast episode probably every single day for a month to just remind myself that the freak out was part of the process. And I owe Brooke so much just for that. I still did have a freak out, but in an unexpected way. I haven't really spoken about this much yet, but I had a bit of a health anxiety freak out. Like I became like a hypochondriac. I ended up going to the doctor to get a referral for a psychologist to talk about my anxiety. And then when that happened, and I talked to him, I kind of realized I didn't actually have anxiety and it just disappeared. It was the weirdest thing, but I'm pretty sure it was my brain being like, this is too good to be true. And then it was constantly looking for something to be wrong. And because my mum was diagnosed with breast cancer when she was 31 as well. I have this underlying, not anxiety, but I've always had some kind of anxiety, I guess it is maybe anxiety, that the same thing would happen to me. And I'm 26 now, so it feels like it's getting closer, but I think it's that everything felt too good to be true, and I'm not used to that feeling because there'd always been something about my life that I had wanted to improve. And when I had changed out of my full-time job and everything was too good, my brain's like, no, something's got to be wrong. So I listen to that episode every day, and it really helped me so much just to know that the freak out, as uncomfortable as it is part of it, and it's a sign that I'm evolving and I want to evolve, so bring it on. So that is the Life Coach School podcast by Brooke Castillo. Yeah, if you can't tell how much I love it just by the way I've been chatting about it, then I don't know, but it's so amazing. I hope to meet Brooke very soon. I've been thinking about it. I really want to meet her. So yeah, make sure you go to the iTunes app and subscribe, or you can just Google the Life Coach School podcast by Brooke Castillo and you can find everything that you need. And I will link everything in the description box below. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I post videos every single day. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Bye!